We all have demons. You know, that voice in your head that chips away at you, constantly pelting you with doubts, criticism, and self-judgment. It's the voice that tells you you're not good enough, that you're stupid, fat, ugly, that no one likes you, or you'll never do it. That voice. By the way, if any of that resonates, this podcast was created for you. It's for those people who want to take control of what goes on between their ears, to master the way they think and feel. The whole thing's based on a really simple set of principles. Firstly, your mental health is your responsibility, not the government or a doctor or a therapist or anyone else. Secondly, the world is becoming an increasingly stressful place. We're not in control of the world. It's not going to slow down for us. So we can either cower under the sheets or get to work on our own headspace. Thirdly, there's no one-size-fits-all answer. There's no blueprint for our mindset. What works for one person may not work for another. So we need to find our own answers. So, through the course of this podcast, we'll be learning together, learning from each other, sharing solutions, sharing our ideas and experiences, what works and what doesn't. You'll find no psychology textbooks here. We'll be exploring real-world topics with real people who are sharing experiences from their own lives. So, if all that sounds good to you, let's dive in.
Hopefully you enjoyed the first episode. As you will probably have seen from our advertising, our second episode is with two very, very special guests. So please welcome badminton star, Olympic silver medalist and former world champion Gail Emms. And Leeds Rhinos legend Stevie Ward. Now, I know from having met one or two athletes over my time that there can be almost like a kind of rose-tinted view of what life as an athlete must be like, because people sitting in the stands watch you going out into the middle, doing your thing, and they'll think, oh, that must be great. I'd love to do that. What's it actually like? What's life like as an athlete? Gail,
it's
how do you
actually
remember?
really dull. It's really boring. So you eat, sleep, train, repeat. That is it. It's a sports book. Whenever I see like autobiographies of sports people, I think the reality should be, I woke up, I ate breakfast, trained, had a nap, trained, went to bed, ate, went to bed. That is it. That is the life. And it's really dull. And I think it's, you look back and you think, why did I do that? You know, you see everyone of your friends and they're all doing, climbing the career ladders and having fun. They're out, sort of Saturday night down the pub or whatever. And you're like, no, I've got to be in bed, got training the next day. And you just think, why do you do it?
For years.
For years. Exactly. It's not even for, like a few weeks. It's for years. But the reason why we do it is because we're goddamn stubborn arseholes, basically. And we have
Don't be an arsehole.
You've got to be a bit of a nasty arsehole, because at the end of the day, you want that feeling of going out there and performing for your club, your country, because there is nothing else like it. We're addicted to adrenaline. It is one of the best feelings ever, and that is why we do it. So yeah, it's horrible. It's most of the time it's pretty depressing, actually, because it's the time you're like losing, or you could be injured, or you're not selected, but somehow you just do it because that high of being, when it goes well, is insane. And that's what life is like. A weird bubble. There you go. It's over to you.
Yeah. What's it really like? It's a good question, isn't it? Good, bad, ugly, and everything in between at moments. I think the reason why I've always loved sport and why I was so passionate about it from growing up is because it's a perfect vehicle to find out who you are in an extreme way. And I think when we love sport and when we all sit and we're zoned into it, and Jones was talking about it before, when we're even in flow, when we're watching it, I think there's a part of us that loves to lose ourselves in it. And I think as a sports person, that is the goal of it. Funny enough, that's the real worth. And we'll watch like an underdog team. And I was part of many teams at Leeds Rhinos where even though we had the fancy stadium and a lot of expectation, we'd sometimes find ourselves in the position of being an underdog, which was like the most beautiful feeling that there is. And we had this podcast earlier speaking about coming through adversity. And there's always this thing that I was going through sport and coming into this team where there was the discipline, there was the hard work, there was the creativity, there was the uniqueness of everyone around me. There was always this thing that I couldn't quite put my finger on, and for why we'd turn up or why we would end up destroying a team. And it wasn't because we had the best game plan in the world. It was almost because we went through a route that probably wouldn't be spoken about or you wouldn't put your finger on, to get to this place where you see a team playing and you go, they've let the shackles off there. They've let the shackles off. They've played at another level to what we've seen before. They just looked free, you know? So I'm always like, as I was going through my career, I was like, well, what are the shackles here?
Yeah.
What are the shackles we're talking about, you know? Like, what are they? Why do we ignore them?
And why couldn't I do that every week?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And why can't I do it? And my belief is that the reason is for that, and it's not just in sport, and this is why I get so passionate about speaking in front of companies and all the rest of it, it's being a human being, because fear comes in. Fear comes in. And there's a fear of vulnerability almost, which isn't a choice. Vulnerability is not a choice. It's running through us as human beings. It's there all the time. It's there when we walk out of the front door. It's there when we walk out in front of 20,000 people, 80,000 people.
Yeah.
So for me, the sport was magic because it was so rife, and it was how you greeted that vulnerability. Or it could be completely covered up. You could not speak about it, and you'd feel lost looking for what actually gets you out to be that person again, to be that player. And you could lose that trust in yourself like you lose your car keys.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Tell us about the experience of walking out in front of thousands of people. You know, like you said, here you get 20,000 people. You're a grand final at Old Trafford, it's nearer 80,000. I mean, what is that experience like for somebody that hasn't been in that position?
I think now I'm looking back and I can speak, or I feel like I'm braver in speaking even more openly. I think part of it's terrifying. Well, a big part of it is terrifying because, again, you have no idea what's going to happen. Part of it is why you're here. This is what you live for. And I think it's a moment where you're unsure, where you're exposed, and if you're lucky enough, the armor's off, you know, and there can be all sorts. I remember playing at Wembley when I was 18, and I was picked at standoff. It was probably one of the most important positions on the field, and I played it a few times at first team at that point. And as you do when you're growing older, you're sort of finding your way in the world. You're finding out who you are. What's the best version of you in this place, in this scenario? I was playing next to Kevin Sinfield, one of my childhood heroes. I was playing next to all my childhood heroes, actually. And I remember walking around and feeling extremely nervous. And I remember people staring in the mirror, looking in the mirror. I remember people throwing up, you know. And it's all normal, this, by the way. This is all normal, you know. But if you dwell on it a little bit, it's mental, you know.
In many senses of the
word. In many senses, yeah. We're going to do this thing, and people deny that it's scary. It is. Well, let's just be honest. It's a scary thing. And I remember going to the toilet, and there was this big changing rooms. You walk down the changing rooms, and you get to the end of the corridor. You sit down, and I'm like, what's meant to prepare me for this thing here? You know?
Yeah.
What do I muster up here? And I remember at this point in my life, I was, you know, when I was a bit younger, I was, funny enough, dubbed the next Kevin Sinfield. And I'd sort of like play standoff, and I'd stand back more, and I think I have to pass more, or manage things a bit more? Is that what I've got to do to play this position? All the rest of it. And next thing I'm thinking, and I'm just completely away from being in the zone, just miles away from it. You know, think about intuition compared to overthinking, planning and prepping. And I remember sitting down on the toilet and I remember staring at the floor. I remember this scrap of paper just like passed underneath the toilet floor. I'm thinking, I can't even shit in peas in this place. You know? But I picked it up and it was a message from Brian Mack, you know, our head coach who'd been there for 8 years, ex-Royal Marine, ex-boxer, rugby league player, and now a coach who would just give us game plan after game plan. But also, I think, connect with you on a deeper level. And the piece of paper just said, Stevie, you always run to the line first. You get involved in the action, and then everything else happens from there. You're a tough man.
He didn't write that, did he? No.
He said man a lot, you know. He was a cool surfer, hippie guy. Yeah, tough man, you know. It was that type of thing. But it just connected to who I was, what I was there for, why I did the thing. I guess it showed empathy for maybe being nervous. And it freed me up. It took the shackles off, you know. But how many of us in life go around with the shackles on? And who's got hold of them, you know?
Yeah. You must have had moments where you were in the spotlight, and I know it's probably different than.
Remember.
Yeah, I was going to say, but
it's not quite.
But it's those moments when you're in the spotlight, you're really in the spotlight, and they don't come around as often, which I think can be a bigger challenge for some people.
Yeah, I think you know, in a way, you were lucky you had that week on. You know, every week you had the crowds here. Whereas badminton, we were lucky we got 10 man and his dog, you know, like turn up for a badminton tournament in this country. You know, badminton in this sport is very much a minority sport. So it's all about the Olympic cycles, that once every 4 years. And we know as athletes that if we basically screw it up at that time, we won't get the recognition. Our sport doesn't get the funding. We are a nobody. So we know that we've got this one chance to shine, which adds more pressure to it. So it's not, you know, yes, we play tournaments every week. We travel the world, you know, mostly in the Far East where badminton is a natural recognised sport. So yeah, that pressure comes on. And when, you know, the Olympics happen and you see it and you see your draw, yes, you have, it's at the back of your mind, 4 years of preparation. We say 4 years, it's been my whole life of preparation for effectively 3 hours of my life. Because if I don't achieve something in that Olympic cycle, then I'll just be forgotten, and no one will know, and no one will. Would I be here if I hadn't won an Olympic medal? No, I wouldn't. So that's the brutality of it, and that's what actually adds all that pressure. Excuse me. So yeah, you know, when you do get that moment and you do get a medal, suddenly from being a nobody to suddenly you're on the front page of papers and, you know, you're on TV shows and you're, you know, suddenly we're like, oh, this is what it's like, you know, to be a little star. Suddenly it's nice, but then of course that comes with added more pressure. And then the next Olympics, suddenly even more pressure's on you. So it's very, very different. But at the same time, you have to embrace it because, you know, that's part and parcel of it. You know, this is what sport is these days. It's not amateur anymore. It's not back in the day where it's like pat on the back and, you know, you see them out in the town that night or whatever, and it's really accessible. Sport is business. It is about, you've got that short-term career of making as much money as possible. You don't know when your career is going to end. You need that, you know, to set you up for the future or whatever. So yeah, it's part and parcel of it all now.
Mm. What were your biggest challenges through your sporting career? Other than boredom.
Playing with an absolute knobhead called Nathan Robertson was my biggest challenge. I played mixed doubles, for those who didn't know. So I actually played mixed doubles, and my partner is a guy called Nathan Robertson, and we actually hated each other. which was, you've got a squad, so there's, you're going to hate someone, but I had to play with a guy that we actually hated. So
Imagine that.
yeah, imagine that. Yeah, imagine 10 years of that. So yeah, the biggest challenges were just lots of, not only that, it's just, being in a sport where, you get laughed at a lot. You go, oh yeah, I play badminton. And, I'll say that. So what do you do? I'm a professional badminton player. And most guys are like, yeah, whatever, I'll beat you. It's just like, no, you won't. You won't win a point off me. And you start the conversation. And then most of the time I did set it up and just thrash the hell out of them. It was so much fun. But it's just that it was kind of like, the biggest challenge was it felt like you were constantly, trying to prove something. So yeah, that was kind of the biggest battle for me. Sort of not, I never ever wanted to go, oh, why, what was the point? I think that was it. Just making sure that whatever I did was worth it, everything like that.
Yeah.
That was the biggest challenge.
Yeah. Stevie?
I don't know. Ultimately, I think maybe my biggest challenge was backing myself a little bit. I think whenever I could get to that place, it was good. I mentioned that example earlier where you sort of thinking, what's the best place to go here? And I always just, from being a young lad, just felt like it was the fear and the trepidation was all part of it. And running towards that defensive line I felt like there was a lot of trust. I felt like there was a lot of faith in that. And running towards this defensive line where ultimately you can't plan it. Do you know what I mean? You can't get to a place where this is what I must do. You have to let go, And I remember running towards this defensive line and shape my body up to the skies, and all of a sudden get to a point where I'm running out of time, so I have to stamp my right foot down and cut into it, and get into this messy melee of people that are trying to take your head off.
Similar with me.
Yeah. With the backhand and all the rest of it. But,
that was Nathan.
Yeah. But that's for me, that was the moment of truth, And Jonesy had said to me, it was like I was escaping from a prison when I'm in this melee and getting away from these people, from these tacklers, because it meant so much to me. Mm-hmm. And on the other side of it, you'd nod your head back, you see the endless blue sky of Leeds running into the green fields in front of you. You put your foot on the gas, and I can remember this, and I don't know if anyone has the same anecdote in here or remembers it from their use, but my mum from the touchline screaming, "Go on, Stevie!"
You can always hear your mum's voice. You can always hear your mum's voice.
I'm just like, there it is.
Yeah.
And then I'd be full of this swagger, like everything would be possible. It's like adventure, freedom, and there it is. And I'd act on a daydream that I'd had 4 days before in maths class, and I'd get to the fullback who was the last line of defence between me and the try line. I'd get to him, I'd chip the ball over the top, I'd run around the side, I'd catch it, and then it'd be about a sprint home, I like to call it. Sprinting home. And I'd get to the try line, I'd swan dive over it and use the ball as my landing gear, and I'd skid to a stop. And that smell of thick, dense mud, fresh cut grass, whatever it is, I'd have that feeling that everything was just right. Everything was just right. You didn't need to tell me what to do. You didn't tell me I didn't need to lift any more weights. I didn't need to do what he does. I just needed to get back to that place. So for me, what's the biggest challenge? Just backing yourself.
Yeah.
Just go do it.
Mm. When you talked about fear before, fear of what? Or what were those things you were scared of?
Fucking everything.
Everything. Everything.
The backhand in badminton.
That's good.
Yeah. Everything. I mean, like, I'm not. I thought I'd be bulletproof. When I got to play. I thought that'd happen. But I've learned that it's been all right with not being bulletproof and letting go of the vine of control which we grab onto as we get older.
Yeah.
We fold and we close and we move away from anything that feels vulnerable, from anything that feels uncertain, because that is vulnerability. It's risk, uncertainty, and emotional exposure.
Yeah.
And I'm speaking at the Greater Manchester Police next week, and it's not about avoiding vulnerability, because we're not avoiding it. No one's going to avoid it. It's there. And for me, it's actually, can you accept what you're scared of? You'll know, Simon, like, when you speak about what you're scared of, the blood moves around to a different part of your brain and you can use it. You know? And scared of failure, scared of losing your job, scared of being humiliated. Phil Jackson, Chicago Bulls coach, says the biggest fear that anyone has in professional sport is being humiliated. Jurgen Klopp would say, it's not complicated. These men go out and play in front of millions of people every week, and they have to be able to know that they can go out there and make a mistake and the world will carry on without them making a mistake or not. So it's faith and it's trust.
Yeah.
So if you don't have that, you're consumed. And I'd sort of felt like I could find my way back to that faith and trust despite everything that had happened, despite injuries, despite adversity, despite shame, all these things, shackles, demons that weren't with me when I was 6 years old, 7 years old. Where do we get back to? And that, for me, that's what it's about.
Yeah, brilliant.
If this is all making sense to you, check out Silence Your Demons. I wrote it for people who are trying to navigate their own mental and emotional health, navigate their own life challenges. If you're interested to find out more, visit silenceyourdemons.co.uk.
Gail, a lot of that, I imagine, resonates with you. What were your biggest fears? How would you...
Fear. The fear of being replaceable. That was my biggest fear. Like, I could be replaced. And you've worked so hard to get to where you've worked all the way, you've gone up the rankings, and at any point you could be replaced. That was awful. And it's personal. Sport is, like when you were talking earlier, you were saying about, you've been at one with the sport. It's you. You've put from such an early age into it. So it's not just something, a career that you've started after university or from school.
It's your first love.
It's your first love, and it is part of you. So I held my first badminton racket when I was 3 or 4 years old. So that has been my life. So it is you. And it makes it even more emotional and personal. So that fear. And, of course, you have guys hitting you. That shuttle goes at 260 miles an hour. Thank you very much. Yes, it does. So it hurts.
Really?
It hurts. Yes, it does. It's a little sting.
It's like a gun, isn't it?
It is a little bit like that. It's a little mark on my leg, and I'm like, ow, that hurt. Oh my God, I couldn't say anything worse because I didn't say my religion. I feel so embarrassed. It does sting. But the fear, it's just that. It's like, for me as well, being a girl in playing mixed doubles as well, it's that fear of, I was told, you've got to be, if you want to play with the boys, you've got to be one of the boys, don't show fear and all this sort of stuff. And so, I'm playing mixed doubles, and mixed doubles is the most un-PC sport, okay? So the guy smashes the shit out that shuttle at the girl. That his job is to make her cry, all right? That is the aim. So, and it's 265 miles an hour is the fastest, the world record for a smash. And that guy is aiming at my face, all right? So I can't show any weakness. I can't show, I'm such a brave soldier. And that's what it's like. I can't show fear, because the minute I show fear, it's just the same as you. The minute you show fear, that's it. That your opponent's won. So everything, whatever you're feeling inside, all that, the self-doubt, don't humiliate me, don't make me look stupid. I've earned my place here, I've done it, but I'm inside, I'm going, so you have to put on this act and everything like that just to get through it and just hope for the best. That is just crazy, isn't it? It is, and I always say, athletes aren't superhuman. We're not robots. We feel absolutely every single emotion of, and like I say, I wake up every day with that self-doubt. Why are you doing this? What you're doing is stupid. You can't play badminton. This is pathetic. Why are you doing it? Over and over again. It's just whether you listen to it. And then when you mentioned that word, perfectly, trust. Trust the process. Trust the fact you trust yourself. Trust that you've done the training, and get your team around you to build that confidence up and put that self-doubt down.
Yeah. One of those reflections, actually, I heard years ago, it's something I wrote into the book, Into Silence Your Demons. It was a rabbi talking on a Thought for the Day on a radio show about, and the phrase was, don't compare your insides to other people's outsides. Because you look around you and they go, they don't look nervous. They look like they've got it all together. They look pretty confident. And they might be thinking the same of you. They might be in bits. But if we compare our insides with their outsides, we're in trouble, because we're always going to lose that. We'll always lose that contest, in my view. But it's one that we could easily fall into, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think, in sport we get compared to loads. You're the next Kevin Simcoe, for instance. I'm the next so-and-so. And then you try and put on those, characteristics. And part of you think, oh, he's like this, well, I'm going to be like this. And sometimes we forget actually who we are inside, and actually we can't be like that person because we're not them, funnily enough. I can't train like that person because I'm not that person. So yeah, and you have to, it's that belief that inside, I used to walk around that badminton court like a right stroppy, moody, pouty little thing. Yeah, whatever. Inside, I'm like, don't know what I'm doing. I'm just going to try and get this shuttle over the net. But that doesn't matter. That worked. That was me, and that was my character. That was my avatar, my badminton avatar. And that's what you just have to do sometimes, isn't it? You just have to find, yes. I'm not even going to worry about what's going on in the inside, what they look like on the outside. I've just got to concentrate on me. I can't, again, control. I can't control my opponents. I can't control this. I can't control that. I can control me. So yeah, I'm going to give it all this attitude on the outside. Inside, I might be going, oh, but that's me, and I'm gonna love it and enjoy it.
Yeah, I'm going to ask how you have learned to deal with those really tough moments. And not to think that you've got the ultimate answer and that you've created some kind of utopia, but just how you've learned to operate in those moments where maybe your insides are screaming at you,
in sport,
but you can still operate. Yeah, and no, it could be in life.
Yeah, I think there was a point in sport where I had to realise my own values, come back to them, and link the behaviours to them, and come to that solid ground and understand where that ground is. And I think even more so now in my life, it's about realising where I am trying to take too much control, realising where that young lad where he just ran to the line and just trusted. Where is that? And what's preventing that? I think that's, if I could try and consolidate it, is the most important thing for me. And practicing acceptance, practicing gratitude, because ultimately that frees me up. I'm already there.
Yeah.
A lot of people say to me, especially now with what I'm going through when I was injured in rugby, like, are you getting there? I'm like, yeah, but if I keep fueling that place where I need to get to, then I'm just neglecting everything. And I'm here now.
Yeah.
Interestingly,
you say practicing acceptance and gratitude, because I think you're right. They could be fleeting. We could accept and be grateful occasionally, but if we did it more consistently, it would probably serve us a lot better.
Yeah, well, it is. I mean, it is a practice, and it is a thing that I got to a point in my career where I was like, yeah, I need this. I need this. With everything that's so uncertain and I don't know what's going to happen, I need this gratitude. And I need people that I can deeply connect with. And I need to really, really engage with those people, and protect them and care for them, and also care for myself.
Yeah.
Care for myself, respect myself. and find what those needs are that I'm not meeting.
Yeah, brilliant.
I think for me, my personality, I'm a bloody nightmare. Okay, I am just. Actually, I'm not. You're a bloody nightmare. But yeah, you know, when you were talking about like sort of that stubbornness and battling through, that is me. So very much like Jackie, just see a brick wall, I'm going to just I can do this, bro. Because I've grown up with very trying to be like one of the boys and that kind of stuff. So it's only now that I've actually sort of understanding that all that anger and frustration, sort of negative emotions, are the ones that have been holding me back. And they would not get me out of tough situations, and they will not get me out of the shit times, basically. It just doesn't work. And it's, again, vulnerability, accountability as well. Accountability, it's not blaming anything, it's not this, it's because of this, because of that, none of that. I had a lot of anger and a lot of frustration I found myself in a very bad place in 2017. And I didn't realise how much anger I had and frustration. And once I got rid of that, it's just those negative emotions. Once I got rid of that, it opened my eyes. The blinkers came off, and suddenly you can see things clearly. So yeah, it's learning about yourself, understanding your character. Now I know what I'm like. Which is weird to say that. I actually understand what I'm like as a person. No one ever did that as a sport. No one
Be a good sport, that.
Yeah, I know. Just be like, oh God, no wonder I didn't like that coach, or no wonder I didn't go like get on with that person, because all the psychometric kind of tests. I'm like, oh, that makes a lot of sense now. And now I know, and now I can sort of it is that acceptance, accountability. And just letting negative emotions go.
I've worked with lots and lots of athletes. I don't know one of them that hasn't struggled when they've transitioned into life beyond sport. What was life like as you were leaving being a full-time athlete and encountering whatever else life had to offer beyond that?
Now, this is really interesting because you're obviously a club and I'm just an Olympic conveyor belt of the UK sport process.
I love how you describe that.
Because that is exactly what it is. And I don't know what it's like in the club system, but I don't belong to a club. I am one of, you get a lottery grant, this is your performance. Once you finish, that's it. They flick you off. There is no support afterwards. So I was like, finished 5th in Beijing, made my decision to retire. And, as a cocky athlete, I was like, I'm going to just rule the world now. I'm going to take it, get a job, and I'll be like successful, and I'll do this and everything like this. Came out of it and I was like, what do I do? And I had no clue. And so after a month of partying, and I did a lot of partying, I was sort of, what do I do? And they said, well, you're not our problem anymore. And that's what they said to me. So bearing in mind, I've been number 1 in the world. I was a former world champion, Olympic silver medalist in sport. The sport turned their back on me and said, well, sorry, we're looking at the next person now. So you can't access our services. You can't come here anymore. You're off the system. You're off the pathway. So. And I said, well, I don't even know what a CV. I've got, like this. And my CV was, I can play badminton. And I was just like, you're kidding me. And I didn't know where to go at all. So it's grievance as well. So not only are you going through the emotional aspect of it, and you have to grieve an identity. You are not that person anymore. And that is the hardest thing. And no one tells you about that. You have to say, not only are you going the emotion of, oh my God, I'm not a badminton player anymore. Who am I? How do I introduce myself? Who is Gail? I don't even know who Gail is, because for 28 years of my life, I've been Gail Emms badminton player. So not only going through the emotions of that, not only the physical sort of withdrawal as well, you're not getting the endorphins, you're not getting the training, you're not getting the support, you're not with the people that you've been, turning out and seeing every day. You're not getting that. And then suddenly you're like expected to go into the big bad world. And the worst thing, and I mean this the nicest way, that you don't get sympathy, because we're not like the armed forces. We weren't going out, well, you were getting hit. I wasn't getting hit. But, we're not putting our lives out there. People go, well, oh, come on, you travel the world and play the sport. You just think you love, get on with it, go and get a job. And in British, badminton, it really was that. It was like, I had a handshake, pat on the back, now go and get a proper job. And you're like,
how?
What? So yeah, the transition was possibly the worst time of my life. It was horrendous, and no one knew what to do with me. No offense to people who haven't been through it, how do you explain what it's like to people who haven't been through it? So the only people you could talk to about it were sports people, because you knew that they knew. But then what? Still doesn't accept, how to get into the next stage. And luckily there is more support now. So, this is when I retired in 2008. So luckily it's been identified as a serious problem. And I know you won't want to talk about clubs, because I think they're a little bit better than the Olympic conveyor belt. Gee, no? You're looking at me like, yes.
Maybe.
No, I think you mentioned the grievance there. There's a lot of grief. You're letting go of a lot of stuff.
It still hurts now. And I retired in 2008, so it's still with you, isn't it?
I'm doing it now, and
yeah.
I said vulnerability about 1 million times, but I think I'm there, and it hurts. And I retired with a brain injury, which obviously I didn't expect. I was sort of captain my hometown team, and hoping to pick up with what I'd always dreamed and imagined. And yeah, I've had to grieve that whole. Never mind what had happened and the teammates, but the whole dream that I had, and that person's still a part of me, and often he needs a seat at the table, but also I've had to learn to accept stuff, and that's probably a part of the grieving, the sort of the model of grief, what you can go through, the bargaining, the anger, the denial, the acceptance. Going through that and pulling myself up out of the rubble and understanding that, crying a lot. And for me, that is one of the more solid ways that I can cope and move through this period. Because you talk about demon charmers and stuff, like the thoughts I'll have are hard to deal with. But I'm learning now, we talk about mental health, and I think in 20 years it's going to be more about the body, and it's going to be more embodied, and realising how our body's speaking to us. Because if I'm not using my body, or if I'm not dealing with the emotion, it comes up the top with thoughts, and I can be ruined. So yeah, it's a process that I have to go through. But also, just like going to that line when I was younger, when I sit with it, that uncertainty and those emotions, I find that I can come through the other side and feel that acceptance and okayness with uncertainty, like spaciousness. And I can feel like happy to be alive, which we don't do when we're in sport. It's like, I don't mean anything unless I win this grand final at the end of the year.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know where I went with that, but a lot of crying. Short in the short way to say.
I mean, you've both described grieving, and actually that's very much the way I see it, because it's the death of a lot of things. It's the death of an identity. It's the death of dreams. It's departure from your passion. It's all of those things, and it's really tough. What have you learned about resilience, and what do you understand resilience to be now, having experienced what you have?
I think, I said before, acceptance. I think it's for resilience for me. And I think resilience for me in sport, again, I had, when I was a sports person, and again, I was very stubborn, very much resilience is just power through, never give up. That was my thoughts what resilience was. And now I've just realised, no, it's not. I see so many athletes, and you probably as well, see so many athletes that are in that mindset and they just power through and they're just doing it wrong. They're doing it wrong, and they're going on the wrong path. They're doing it just because they're being stubborn, and they're just, no, I got this. So for me, resilience is not being that person at all. It's about stopping, looking at the situation, saying this is what the situation is right now, accepting it is as it is right now. And then resilience is saying, I have the power to change it. I do not like this situation. I am going to change it. And this is how I'm going to change it. That to me is resilience. Because, I've seen people, athletes that are just carrying on and just, I'm like, mate, stop, look, what are you doing? You're carrying on doing the same, definition of insanity, isn't it? Doing the same thing over and again. The same result. It's madness. So resilience is, for me, again, just taking that time and, gratitude and appreciation. So right now, this is the situation. Do I like this situation? Do I want to change the situation? What can I do about it? And then again, with all the three speakers earlier, they did exactly that. They stopped, they had that moment and gone, right, I'm not happy with this. What can I do to change it? And I think that's resilience for me.
Yeah, and making some different choices.
Making some different choices, exactly that. Because, that stubbornness, and which we see in loads, and I did it exactly that. And when I was going through my bad time, that's why, because I wasn't stopping and accepting my situation, I was just had my blinkers on and I was going on the path because I didn't want to accept where I was. I didn't want to be vulnerable. I didn't want to ask for help. I was just being a stubborn cow. And that got me in such a bad place. So
Is that through fear though?
Through fear. But through fear and again, ironically, I've been talking, we talked sort of about our journey and stuff, and I wasn't practicing what I was preaching. I was just so goddamn stubborn. And I was putting I didn't want anyone to know that I was in trouble, or I didn't want anyone to, sort of, I'd gone through enough. I felt like I'd gone through the grievance, and I felt like I was on my way up, but I wasn't. I was just treading water badly. But I think that, I didn't want anyone, people held me in high regard. Oh, Gail's all right. Gail's won a medal. She's fine. You have that like sort of standing in,
like that little piece of metal does something for you.
Yeah, it was like, whoa, opens the gates to everything. It really doesn't. Well, it gets you a few drinks in nightclubs. But, again, you had this standing in the, people in the community or whatever. They're like, oh, that's Gail Emms. And you're like, yay. How can I ask that person? Like, help. I need some help. I need work. I need a job, whatever. All that you can't. Because you start, and it was only when, I got to that point, I got to a very similar point to Gary actually, that point I just went, oh shit, stop it, stop, accept, be vulnerable, ask for help.
Yeah, I see it like, because it'd be easy to sit here and think that it's a different type of resilience than what you see normally in the rugby world, the sporting world. It's that world that just keeps going, just battering through no matter what. And I believe that uncompromising will is very important, and I believe it's a part of me. And I need to give space for that. Probably some stubbornness in there, but I think in many games when we did play, maybe we turned out here on the field at Edinley. Maybe we went to Wakefield away. And I remember us going out on the field and just feeling vacant. Some games it just felt vacant. It just felt like there was no one there on the team. And it's probably these games you've watched and like, what's happening? Why is no one? You're just like drained of energy. And for me, that fear's stolen that. No one's gone out there to play poor. Some people might want to save energy. That didn't come into my head, but it was like looking around like, why are we not turning up? Why are we not doing what we've said we were going to do all week? And what's going on? And then eventually we'd get through the first half. We'd be 10 points down, 15 points down, whatever. And they'd be like, we'd look at each other and be like, oh, we've had a nose bust here. Do you know what I mean? What have we been doing?
Mm.
And it's almost like, how quickly can we get to that place where we turn out with this courage and this acceptance of anything that could happen? We've already been beat here. We've already been embarrassed. We could well lose here. Who really cares now what goes on? Are we going to show up? And all of a sudden, there's this resilience that comes through that you can't assign a method to do it.
Mm.
But you have to go through this route through vulnerability and acceptance to get to this point where you say, no one's coming through me anymore. It's just not happening. You know, it's not. There's no possibility. And if it does happen, then that's fine. And it's like that resilience where there's nothing to lose. And I believe it's where we just dismantle and all of the shit dissolves that's been around that action. And our true self comes, our innate well-being comes through. This power, this resilience that we've got underneath all the crap. That's what I think resilience is. And I think resilience will always be, for me, despite what happens, despite what I can't control, despite what I wish I could control, despite what I wish would happen, what would have happened differently. And I'll always remember those moments, always. And I won't stop until we realise that there's fear that sits in between that and shame and stops us getting to that point.
Yeah.
And makes us control it.
Mm. It reminds me of, I'm a bit of a Star Wars nut, a little quote from Master Yoda, who said, you have to let go of all that you fear to lose. And that's kind of the path to freedom.
I'm nicking that. That's my first slide now.
I can't claim that one. That's trademark Lucasfilm. I'll have to give that one up.
Like that.
But it's not bad, is it?
That's a good one.
So last question, you guys now use your experiences to help others. How do you help others through the experience you've had?
I always thought that I'd be coaching or, sort of playing badminton and sort of, having a coaching academy or inspiring kids that way. And actually badminton isn't what I've realised was my passion. My passion is the other side, the psychology side. So now my thing is I don't want any athlete to go through what I went through. And I think that's, I think it was so awful, and it's not about recognition, it's not about fame, it's not about money or anything like that. It is that going from such a high pressure bubble into the world and just feeling lost, and it's just a horrendous feeling. And it doesn't have to be that way. And it's not about, even if you, sort of find a place and you work or whatever, because most athletes, we don't, so especially Olympic athletes, I think the average yearly wage of an Olympic athlete is about £16,000 a year. So that's, once they've taken off all the cost of equipment and coaching and traveling, not all of the Olympians are, successful gold medalists, like Dame Jess Annis Hill or anything like that. Most of them are struggling, and they put their houses on, so it's remortgage their houses just to get to an Olympic Games. So that's the reality of it. So yes, if you're lucky and get a medal and you get some, sort of work out of it, fantastic, that's great. The reality is not like that for most athletes. So even if they do find a place of work, they've still gone through the emotional aspect of the grievance, and that's it. They haven't, maybe they were supposed to achieve a medal and they didn't achieve a medal. So again, it's that the failure feeling and everything like that. So for me now, it's setting up. We've got a few little groups set up. Athletes can talk to each other. Just get on I'm feeling like this today, and we just talk. And it's just knowing that someone else has been in that situation. Sometimes that's all it is. It's just like, you know that I know what you're feeling like. You can talk to me about it or not, or even if I'm just here, just chatting about anything. That I think is the most important thing. And then using the expertise, like, okay, I know we've all got a great network. You know, sports have got a fantastic network of people. So if we can help, okay, why don't you talk to this person? Or if you're feeling struggling, okay, I'm not qualified in that, but I know someone who is. And that's the most important thing. So that's what I do. And I think we're getting better. Again, athletes are being more vulnerable, are being more open. So Adam Peaty, for instance, has talked about his mental health for swimming and the Olympics. Simone Biles as well, gymnast. You know, it's coming out more, you know, because I think, again, that perception of athletes that we're robots and we don't have, you know, and it's just life is glamorous and it's great. So now just putting that, you know, that no, we're normal, we're human. So yeah, I think that's been my work, and it's it's getting better. So thank God for that.
Fantastic. Stevie?
Yeah, mainly what I can manage at the moment is doing these things, speaking. So keynote speaking for companies, working with leaders, leadership programs. Because at the moment I still struggle with migraines and dizziness. So it means that bizarrely I choose one of the hardest things to do. Maybe that's just maybe who I am. But it means I can lie down and take it easy and focus on trying to recover and heal really for the rest of the time. So keynote speaking, leadership, working with people in sport. I guess just using the thread of what we've been pulling tonight and speaking to those guys and allowing that acceptance, that vulnerability for people to have that space and that empathy, you know, because once you close down as an individual and you close off and engineer smallness and don't trust your own grief for life, your own uncertainty for life, you also don't trust other people's. So you have people in sport that have coaches that they're working with that have no empathy at all, because they're not connected to their own suffering and their own pain. So when these players are going through what can be the hardest moments of their lives and feeling like they're in a straitjacket, not being able to speak about it releases that valve. So as soon as you speak to what they're feeling, it's like they just go,
yeah,
that's what I'm feeling. And like, well, we've covered all that. What do you want to do now? And it's not the opposite. They don't want to run out and leave. It's actually, well, I'm going to go and be the best version of me that I can possibly be. I'm not going to let anyone else get in the way of that and take me away from it. So, yeah, working with players like that, it gives me a lot of purpose for what I'm dealing with now.
Brilliant. And actually, it probably goes to the heart of why I think conversations like this are so valuable, that we start to realise the stuff that's going on inside our heads is probably going on inside everybody's heads. We're not alone. We're not stupid for feeling this way. We're not weird for feeling this way. This is how everybody thinks and feels. And I think that in its own right, just if that was our very first step, it's a really solid first step, because then it allows us to be vulnerable, which, as you guys have said, probably is one of those doorways that gets us to a better place, the vulnerability and acceptance. Brilliant. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me thank Gail and Stevie. Absolutely brilliant.
I'd really like this podcast to help as many people as possible. So please subscribe and share it with colleagues, friends, family, and anyone that you think might benefit. Thank you.